and welcome back to Good Morning Oakcrest. I'm Chris Tatus, your host for today's show, and we've got a great show coming up for you today. Lindsay Luderman is here. She is an author who published a book called The Escape, as well as 2 sequels, both of which we're going to talk about as well in just a little bit. But here's the amazing part. Lindsay was only 15 when her first book was published, and now at the age of 17 is an accomplished author of 3 novels. So I'd like to welcome to the show Lindsay Luderman. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I saw your story a couple days ago on WBAL, and I thought it was an amazing story, hearing about how at the age of 17 you've already published 3 different books, which is something that I don't think many teenagers can claim, and 3 novels at that. So it's really great to have you on the show today and to talk to you a little bit more about, you know, what it was that inspired you to become a writer. So tell us, are you somebody that's been interested in writing your whole life?
Absolutely. I've always loved writing and telling stories, and when I was younger, my parents used to read me 3 books every night and tell me 3 stories, and I loved the idea of stories and characters and the whole storyline all together, and I just knew that was something I'd be interested in.
And now, did you find that writing for you was easy, or is this something where you have a story in your head, but maybe getting it out there is a little more difficult?
I think it's pretty easy for me. It definitely takes some time with the books. I guess I have to like think it through a little bit, and then, you know, there's the first draft, and then I go back and correct it. But I love it, and the characters and the whole story altogether.
Now, your first book is The Escape, and it's part of a trilogy with 2 other books. But let's talk about The Escape a little bit more. Now, this book was published when you were only 15 years old. You said it was right before your 16th birthday. When did you actually start writing this book?
I started writing it when I was 14, and that's when I got the idea for it. And as soon as I started writing it, I knew that it was going to go a lot further than my past stories, and that I loved it. And I really loved the idea of teenagers being able to fight for something that they wanted. Right. And so I just kind of took it from there.
And I think that's something that's a big deal for our residents as well. You know, here at Oakcrest, we're always talking about seniors breaking stereotypes. You know, a lot of people believe seniors are a certain way, that once you pass the age of 65, you can't accomplish things. But I think a lot of adults, and maybe even some of our residents, may have some predisposition towards teenagers. And you know, and I think you're right. I think seeing teenagers, not only, you know, in your book talking about them, you know, fighting for what they believe in, but also with you being a teenager and writing a book like this, I think you're breaking some pretty big stereotypes as well. So congratulations on that one.
Thank you.
Now tell us a little bit more about what The Escape is about.
It's about the government of America believing that teenagers are the main cause of crime in America. So once a teenager turns 13, they're locked up until they're 18 in these teenage confinement buildings. And the main character, Wendy, and her friends discover this way to escape. And it's all about them kind of going against the government and proving that just because they're teenagers doesn't necessarily make them troublemakers.
I gotcha. So would you say this is set further in the future, or is this something that you maybe, I'm not saying worried about, but is this set in like the near future?
It's not necessarily something that I'm worried about, but it's more if events happened maybe a little bit differently. This could be our future or our present. That's why it's science fiction.
Of course, of course. Hopefully our government, we may think about it, but I think a lot of people out there wouldn't want to lock teenagers up just yet. So some parents may want to do it on a daily basis, but whether or not you do it from 13 to 18, like in your book, that might be a little bit different.
You'd be surprised how many parents, when I tell them what it's about, go, "That's a cool idea." I'm like, that's not the idea here.
And at 17 right now, you're sitting here going, all right, if we're going to try it, can we at least wait one more year?
Just one more year, please.
Just let me ride this out for a little bit longer. So that's great to hear. Now, your main character is Wendy Austin, and she's part of a normal family from what I can read. I'm in the process of reading the book right now. I want to apologize. I didn't get an opportunity to finish it just yet. But Wendy seems like she comes from a pretty normal family. Mom, dad, a little brother. The little brother's name again? I'm sorry.
Jamie.
Jamie, that's right. Okay. Now, for Wendy, do you see a lot of yourself in Wendy, or?
To some extent. Wendy's very hard-headed, which I am. You know, I fight for what I believe in, and I kind of do what I want to do, and I don't let anybody stop me. And I guess that's kind of what Wendy holds within her, and also the love that she feels for her little brother, it's
Right.
based off of how much I love my younger brother who's 13. And she's very overprotective of him, just like I am with my brother. So I guess like the entire time that she's running, it's running to the people that she loves, her family, and I love my family.
It's wonderful. And I can tell that even from the beginning of the book, from the portions that I've already read, I mean, you can see the emotion that she feels for her little brother Jamie. You know, I mean, it seems like, you know, even from the very beginning, it's one of the first couple lines in the first chapter is that how much she misses him and how much she's worried about him, because at the time he's 12 in the book, and you know he's going to be getting ready to come into one of these teenage confinement buildings, as you call them. So now when you talk about the teenage confinement buildings and stuff like that, and why the teenagers are brought in there, now in your story, why is it that you think that the government has decided this?
Well, basically, throughout the book, it is shown that the government had been getting a lot of complaints from gangs and trouble in America and danger, and so they figured what better way than to just take the teenagers who are probably the main rebels and lock them up. But that creates an entire new problem.
Right. Right. Plus, I mean, I feel like a lot of people don't realize, you know, just like, you know, I hate to keep drawing the comparisons with our residents as well, but, you know, I think a lot of people may, because of the feelings that they have towards teenagers or seniors in this case, you know, they feel like maybe it's just easier to put them away over here somewhere, you know. So now in the book, obviously, I hate to, you know, feel like I'm giving something away, but I think the title does a little bit. They manage to escape and they go off on the run to try and prove just how valuable a teenager can be. For you, do you feel like this is something that you had to do, maybe in a less extreme case, but at least proving what a teenager's worth is?
Maybe to some extent, you know, a lot of people would always say to me, you know, you're very young, I'm not sure you're going to be a writer just yet, maybe one day. And I've always wanted to prove to them, this is what I'm going to do, and people aren't going to stop me, and that's why I went ahead and published these. And I guess that's kind of my escape, my proof to the world that I can do what I want to do. And I really want people to understand that you're never too old or too young to do what you love. It's never too early or too late. And if you believe in something, if you think that you can do it, just go ahead and go for it. Don't let anybody stop you.
And I think that's a great message, you know, for everybody out there. You know, I mean, the big whole, you know, I think we hear it a lot. And I think to an extent, some people may see it as a cliche, but I think it's true. You know, if there's something that you truly believe in and something that you want to do, you can definitely accomplish it. So now for you, you've written The Escape. You have 2 other books. What are the titles for those?
Through Their Eyes and On the Line.
Okay, and those are just sequels to The Escape. So we have plenty more stories with Wendy Austin and her friends.
Absolutely.
Okay,
The
great.
Escape ends on a major cliffhanger, and that's where Through Their Eyes picks up a couple weeks later. And On the Line picks up directly where Through Their Eyes ends.
Okay.
So.
Well, that's great to hear that I didn't pick up your book until all 3 have been published, because I know for a fact that there have been some books I've read recently with cliffhangers, and it kills me when, you know, that you get to that last page in the first book and you're like, when's the next book get published? I need to see what's going on
Is
now.
it out yet?
Exactly.
One more week.
Exactly. Now, your book is classified as a young adult book, and it's something, like I said, focuses on a dystopian future. And we've seen a lot of books recently that have come out for young adults, very similar to this. The Hunger Games is a perfect example of it. Are you a fan of The Hunger Games?
I am.
Okay,
Big
all
fan.
right. So The Hunger Games is out there now, and it just became a big movie. Now, before we talk about that, though, do you think your inspiration came from like The Hunger Games and books of that nature?
Well, actually, I didn't read The Hunger Games until after I'd written all of the books.
So you were ahead of the curve. You were ready to go.
A little bit, yeah.
She's a very good businesswoman. She was waiting until things like this became popular, and then she's like, I'm in. She's ready to go. So, but do people draw comparisons between the 2?
Every once in a while, people do say, is this based off The Hunger Games? Does this have something to do with it?
Right.
And while it has similarities, it's also different within the fact that here's this group of teenagers fighting against the government, like, all together.
Right.
And in The Hunger Games, they're put against each other.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. The Hunger Games, you know, in the very beginning, I'm a fan of it. I've read it myself. And for our residents that don't know, it has to do with a competition that occurs between 24 children under the age of 18, where they fight to the death, and it's very violent and very graphic. Exactly. Now, is your book in that way violent or graphic?
Not as much in the first book.
Okay.
I guess to some extent. There's a lot of action.
Okay.
A lot of people think that it's going to be a lot scarier than it is because of the cover, which is why I went a little bit easier on the second and third one.
I gotcha. Now with the Hunger Games, we talked about, how it focuses on this dystopian future, and it talks about a world where things have gone awry. And yours very much focuses on, this could be, for lack of a better term, this could be today, this could be tomorrow, that something like this could occur. We're looking at this from a perspective that, it goes on and it's adults that end up helping the kids later on in the Hunger Games, to fight oppression and stuff like that. Do you kind of focus, is there any like adults in your book that kind of help these kids out?
In the second book, I'm not going to give too much away, but
okay, all right.
they meet this one character who is somewhat on their side and reappears in the third book.
Right.
And that's where they learn that this entire time adults have been on their side. Parents don't want their kids to be taken away.
Right.
And they're just too afraid to face the government. And once they learn that there is this whole uprising of teenagers themselves, they realize that there is something they can do about it.
Right. That's one thing. The other one that I noticed just from the early chapters is there's some talk in the beginning that Wendy's parents were talking about going to Canada. So this is something that's strictly in the United States. This is going on where the kids are getting confined. And I think, that could also be something that for our residents is a big deal, because they face things like the draft and just, trying to escape that sort of thing. So I mean, I think this is filled with a lot of stuff that I think not only, young adults can definitely take away from, but also, people of all generations.
Absolutely.
So I mentioned it a minute ago, Hunger Games, big movie coming out, huge. Any hopes that maybe The Escape will get its movie treatment?
Well, I've actually already written a screenplay for it, which I haven't done anything with yet.
Right.
But kind of my dream is to have books that are turned into movies. Anything that's working with stories,
right,
I love.
Okay.
So
you're not strictly looking at books. You're looking at writing as a career in the long term as well.
Creative writing, telling stories, poetry. One thing that I love about novels is that there's really no rules. I guess you can just go anywhere with it. But one fun thing about screenplays is that it's a completely different story altogether. You just, like, this way that it's formed, it's like in the middle and you have to give just enough details.
Right.
And very different. And I like learning a new style of telling a story.
Right. And I think that, so you definitely want, writing is definitely in your future. You're not
Absolutely.
sure how you're going to play into it just yet, but you definitely want to do writing as you go on in life. That's good to hear. Definitely. Now, you're still in high school. We talked about that a little while ago. What are your plans? You're only a junior, but I know you got to start thinking about college. Any ideas as to what you want to do going into college?
I want to focus on creative writing, continue to write stories, and maybe focus on directing a little bit.
That's great. That's wonderful to hear. Now, if you don't mind me asking, what high school do you attend?
I attend Park School.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. So right around here in Baltimore. You're a Baltimore native. You grew up here, right?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So not only an accomplished 17-year-old, but also a local Baltimore celebrity as well. And we appreciate you coming on our show today. Now, one last question for you real quick. If our residents out there have maybe kids or grandkids that are interested in writing, what is the one biggest piece of advice that you can offer to them about writing that they can maybe give to their grandkids to push them into writing?
I think when you're writing, you just have to start writing, start from wherever your mind is and just start from there and keep reading and learning new ways to write. And don't let anybody stop you from doing it, and tell your story or write however you want and just go from there.
That's great to hear. That's definitely, it's very much a do what you love. Don't worry about what anybody else says. So, Lindsay, thank you very much for coming on our show today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, if anyone is interested, Lindsay's book, The Escape, is available in all 3 of the community libraries if you're interested in reading it. You're going to have to find the 2 sequels to it yourself, but The Escape is available in the community libraries in Crestview Station, Town Center, and Village Square. Once again, I've been talking to Lindsay Luderman. She's a 17-year-old author from the Baltimore area who published her book, The Escape.